Hi, today I'm going to be talking about the psychology of low self-esteem. First, what does self-esteem even mean? By definition, it means having confidence in one's own abilities. This means that having a lack of self-esteem would simply mean that you don't have much confidence in yourself, just like the vast majority of students at Beckman. Luckily, you aren't alone. As addressed by websites like Psychology Today, the American Psychological Association, and the University of Tilburg, among others, self-esteem among Gen Zers is at an all-time low when compared to those in other generations. There have been multiple studies conducted that shed light on what the causes of this may be, sharing that factors like social media, peers, family, school, etc. are some of the greatest contributors to low self-esteem. So, I conducted my own study, posting an anonymous survey on my Instagram account for an hour to see how the results would turn out. Out of the 29 people who responded to my poll, 72.4% of the people admitted to having low self-esteem, while 27.6% of the people said that they did not have low self-esteem. Looking at the breakdown of this, the majority of the people said that the biggest contributor to this was due to family, followed by peers, and then other factors, which has consisted of school, and then lastly, social media. So, given this context, what exactly is the psychology behind low self-esteem? Scientists and psychologists have worked together to find a wide variety of possible factors, ranging in all types of influences, including behavioral, developmental, and biological. In terms of behavioral influences, Psychology Tools lists out various causes. For one, early experiences including punishment, neglect, or abuse are mentioned. Particularly, children who have undergone some form of negative punishment will oftentimes face issues with self-esteem. To elaborate, if a child gets spanked every time they do poorly on a math test, they may eventually strictly compare themselves with others. In other words, they may think that they aren't as intelligent as their peers since they were punished for not being that smart in their guardian's eyes. Another thing mentioned is not receiving enough warmth, affection, praise, love, or encouragement. Being reminded that you are important is crucial to one's development, so when this variable interval schedule slowly loses its schedule and no longer exists, a child may no longer feel any worth or value. What once felt like an ounce of love may now make someone feel hollow. However, on a more positive note, there are also things that can boost one's self-esteem. These things include noting the positive things about yourself, giving yourself breaks, and being accepting of constructive criticism, among others. In broader terms, positive reinforcement can benefit one greatly, as you can get rewarded for doing the right behavior. When being rewarded, it is a sense of validation and encourages you to continue that action. For instance, countering the previous example I made regarding the math test, let's say a child was rewarded for doing well on a math test by having the ability to watch 30 minutes of TV. This child would feel confident in who they are since they got a reward, meaning their behavior was valued, and the parents would also be happy because the child would be motivated to keep doing well in school. Similarly, other positive aspects could include following pro-social behavior, because by following this from people who are modeling it could be inspiring. This allows one to directly learn from another through watching their actions and copying them. Again, given the math test example, if a child saw another student study really hard to get an A, the child would probably start studying more as well in order to get an A, especially knowing that there could be a reward or there might be a punishment removed. Considering developmental influences, children are greatly affected since they have not yet grown into their true selves, making them extremely susceptible in these areas to either improve or worsen their self-esteem. Two of the primary areas of searching for identity that children struggle to work with are identity versus role confusion and competence versus inferiority. Diving in deeper, if children aren't sure who they are or who they want to be, they may copy everyone else around them based on social norms. However, this may not be who they really are, and this means that they may feel as though their own personality is not good enough, therefore lowering self-esteem. As for competence versus inferiority, if parents punish their children for not doing well on tests, this field will be augmented and the child will feel an even greater sense of failure than before. In other words, the child will have low self-esteem because they have no sense of accomplishment whatsoever. Lastly, it is also important to note that biological influences play a role in the way we see ourselves. In fact, there have been studies done to see exactly where increasing and decreasing self-esteem occurs in the brain. Through fMRI scanning, 2 Dartmouth professors teamed up to scan 48 people's brains, specifically using both diffusion tensor imaging and magnetic resonance imaging. Their research consisted of combining their computational model with clinical questionnaires to explore the neural mechanisms underlying vulnerability to mental health problems. They found that people who had greater fluctuations in self-esteem during the task also had lower self-esteem more generally and reported more symptoms of depression and anxiety. People in this group showed increased prediction error responses in a part of the brain called the insula, which was strongly coupled to activity in the part of the prefrontal cortex that explained changes in self-esteem. The researchers hypothesized that such a pattern of neural activity could be a neurobiological marker that confers increased risk for a change of common mental health problems. In fact, with their information, they identified a possible marker for vulnerability to mental health problems. Using these new data points, the researchers hope these tools can be used to improve diagnostics, enabling mental health professionals to make more specific diagnoses and targeted treatments. Fortunately, while many of us do have self-esteem issues, it isn't always going to be this way. As a matter of fact, people's self-esteem typically greatly increases during the ages of adulthood, as you would have already occupied positions of power and status, which might promote feelings of self-worth. With this said, in terms of Kohlberg's moral development, the post-conventional stage is usually reached during adulthood, in which many are considered to have reached self-actualization. Because of this, people grow satisfied with who they have become, and this is something that we can all hopefully look forward to, assuming that we all struggle with self-esteem. Thank you for listening to the Psychology of Low Self-Esteem.